To the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. You hear that? The Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. Let's go Giants.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. This week we are 66% British, 33% Irish, but as always, 100% Giants. No Dan or Kev this week due to work commitments, so I'm taking up that host mantle once again. However, you can see both myself and Shane are joined by a friend of the pod and Irish NFL co-host Brian O'Leary. Brian, how are we doing, mate? You all right?
Great. I can't remember how it's been quite a time since I was on, but obviously, you know, we're getting closer to the new season, and there's great excitement about being a Giants fan these days. I'm sure we're going to get into it, but like we're so far removed from where we were last year, going into the new season with little expectations. I think we're all quietly confident. I think that it's a good season ahead for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And with me hosting, that means Shane gets to do his producing job again. How are you after the return of the football last week?
Yeah, not talking about football. There's any American football that matters to me at the minute. It's nice to be back. Obviously, I missed both episodes last week. I've listened back to them both. Though, and absolutely great interview with Art as well. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And then it's great having Brian on this week. I always feel like I miss it whenever Brian's on, so it's like finally good to be on at the same time as Brian. To be fair,
I said that to Kev, Craig, the last time I was chatting to him. I said, me and Shane are like two people in the night. We're not meeting each other very often. Even when we were at the game last year in London, we didn't unfortunately get to meet up on the Saturday night either. But it's great to be back with you guys. It's great to have Shane here with Shane, because it's been quite some time since we had an opportunity to talk Giants together.
Yeah.
Yep. So obviously, before we begin, if you're watching this live on YouTube or Facebook, as always, pop some comments into the comment section, or any questions, just let us know. Give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe if you haven't. So let's get on with it. So as you said, Brian, it's been a while. March was the last time that you were with us. So pre-draft, just after free agency. So before we get into it though, we just want to remind you of something that you said to myself and Kev.
We're going to pick, I think we're going to, if he's still there, I think it'll be Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. That's one that is an intriguing one, because he can take the top off of defense. If you look at I know it's college, and I know it's at times it can be hard to come into the NFL and do that initially. And we have seen players do it immediately, like Jamar Chase and other players come in and hit the ground running. But he looks like the kind of player that we need, that can take the top off of defense, as opposed to other players. But say Flowers, I think if he's still there at 25, I think I'd be surprised if he gets past the Ravens at 22.
So going off of that, have you got the lottery numbers? Because they'd be good. Because, Jalen Hyatt didn't come to us in the first round. Obviously came to us in the third round. Zay Flowers did go to the Ravens.
Baltimore. Yeah, he did, yeah.
So,
and I've also...
Go on.
And I also got a nice colour on holidays, judging by that March picture, as opposed to how I look today.
So we might as well pick up there. Hyatt, we managed to snag in the third round. If training camp's anything to go by, your prediction of him taking the top off of defense is pretty accurate. And he looks like he might have the potential to be a steal, considering we were talking about first round there as well. How do you feel about that now, and how do you think he's settled in?
I mean, if you look at the coverage, which we're seeing from training camp, it's lights out stuff, isn't it, in terms of the speed in which he's presenting to the team. Daniel Jones with the deep balls. I'm always kind of concerned about, and it's not just the Giants. We know from covering, you take time out to look at various different teams, the amount of coverage which is shown around loads of players in training camps, but obviously we're focused on their team. And you're seeing this, and you can't help but get excited by the thoughts of a more expansive offense and giving Daniel Jones weapons down the field. And Jalen Hyatt was a player I thought, because again, this is what we wanted. We discussed the narrative last year that it was an offense very much built around Saquon, and there was weapons that were beneficial. We haven't had a kind of a real speedster for quite some time, and someone who can do this in put the safeties and put the secondary on the back foot, potentially even allowing Darren Waller to thrive in this offense. But to see him go in the third round and use obviously as well, would have watched the covers that came out after the draft where David and Shane are in the war room and they're talking about potentially taking them in the second round, and they were comfortable whether it was him or the center. And for a player who initially was, I always thought maybe first round was a bit of a stretch. Like we read the draft coverage, people say he may go late first round, certainly the second round. So for him to go in the third, and for us to get him, and then obviously to get a center in the second round, like I'm just going to kind of be a bit cautionary because I don't want to find myself week 6, week 7 and disappointed by what we're seeing from him. I think we have to expect there's going to be bumps and bruises with any wide receiver coming into the league. But I think what's happened over the course of the last 3 or 4 years outside of the Giants, we're seeing players step into the league. Your Jamar Chase and other players that just hit the ground running, wide receivers. And now I think we all have this expectation that when you draft a wide receiver, whether it's for a second or third round, they're going to come in immediately and show the potential and be, I suppose, contribute immediately. I'm not entirely sure that's going to be the case. I think they might try to be a little bit cautious around how often he's in the game initially and with the offense that they have in terms of the players they brought in the offseason as well. But no, certainly exciting. I can't wait to see him in action. And hopefully we see him in preseason action as well.
Yeah. And one of the names that you mentioned there as well was the centre that we took in the second round with John Michael Schmitz there. But obviously we selected Banks in the first round and then JMS in the second. Both have started with the first team, offense and defence in training camp. How do we feel about those two now with sort of 2 weeks of training camp now in the bag and a preseason game pretty much on the horizon?
I'm keen to see Banks in preseason because there's a lot of attributes around what he will bring to the table, but there's also kind of some flaws around being a bit handsy. Is that the right word to use? Around, we might have to accept that we're going to see a lot of kind of pass interference flags initially when he's playing, and obviously as he settles into his career, that will come in time. But it'd be interesting to see how quickly he adapts to being playing in the NFL. I think it's one of those positions that's quite scrutinized these days in the league, and you're going to see there's so many explosive wide receivers go up against them immediately. Like just so many. You got your AJ Browns. I know we're not playing later in the season. The Eagles. You got Lamb with the Cowboys. In their own right, the Commanders have players. That's just the division alone. Never mind the tough road schedule we have early in the season. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts. And in terms of the center, like you read all the reports, and he seems to be hitting the ground running, and he's going to transition very quickly into this position. And it's like gradually over the course of the last 2 years, you've seen what they've done on this offensive line, and Evan Neal, right tackle, and Thomas gets the big contract. I think for years we've been struggling with an offensive line, and yet amazingly within 12 months they've eradicated that. And you've got other players, you've got competition on the offensive line. We didn't have that 2 or 3 years ago. It was essentially you knew who were 6 or 7 players, and then we were picking players off the scrap heap at the back end of the season and playing them just to kind of fill the needs and fill the holes. Not now. We've got players in all positions, so it's great to see. I mean, I'm interested to see how Smith and Daniel Jones kind of build up that relationship. Initially, I remember Tom Brady going to the Bucs and Johnson, the center, saying he couldn't get over the level of content and stuff that was being provided by Brady, and it was night and day compared to what he played with previously. So it'll be interesting to see how they're building their relationship and what comes of that early on in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've covered it in bits across the sort of State of Play series, and we're going to speak a bit more about Banks later. But we're pretty happy with everything that seems to be going on from what we can see. And yeah, JMS held his own against Sexy Dexy last week. So it's nice to see that, and it's just nice to see the sort of camaraderie that a lot of the players seem to have already. And I mean, Shane will get into this in a minute, but a lot of the sort of players like Thomas, who seems to be sort of talking with a lot of the legends who are there. It's nice to see that as well. But Shane, did you want to go through some of the off-season catch-up that we've missed with Brian?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's no place better to start out than obviously the way the Saquon Barkley situation kind of panned out. Obviously, it was talked about from the minute we signed Daniel Jones and Saquon got franchised. There's a lot of chatter about him getting the deal, and a lot of belief, including myself at least, and a couple of the lads on here, thought we'd get a deal done before that tag deadline arrived. Obviously, if he has another great season like he did last year or even better, we're probably going to be having the same conversations again. So what were your views on how the Saquon Barkley situation panned out, and how do you potentially see it going into next off season as well?
I think in the end, I think Saquon's camp kind of relinquished, I suppose, the ownership and here back to the Giants, because you got to the tag deadline, and I agree with you. I was saying, we've been here before. With you read the news and you see these players kind of continuously negotiate and have their people. You see him change his agent. That for me, that was telling that he wanted to get the deal done. Joe Shane has come out publicly in numerous interviews over the course of the last 2 weeks, because people are kind of trying to pick holes and saying there's a strain in the relationship. He's adamant there isn't. Saquon seems to be saying the same thing. What I did find a little bit surprising was he seemed to be very adamant in an early press conference when he did return back in after signing the contract that he was really thinking about holding out. So he went from one stream to another. He's talking about, I really had great intentions to hold out, which surprised me. I didn't think he would go down that road. And yet within, 2 or 3 days of the tag, I think it was the following Monday, Tuesday, he signs this 1 year. And the incentives, I don't know, like if you really drill into the incentives that have been added to the contract, they're quite significant in the sense of they're a lot more than of the numbers in which he did last year. So he's going to have a really strong season to even get those incentives. So essentially, he's coming back playing on that 1 year, and that strikes me as someone who, does he regret not taking the contract? I mean, the Giants have put 3 contracts on the table. Like no one can ever fault the Giants for trying to tie him up into a long-term situation. Like there was one in the off-season, the bye week. Then there was one by all accounts immediately after the season, and then the one obviously as we got closer to that tag deadline. And I think Saquon's kind of, I'm not going to use the word egg in the face because I think that's a bit harsh on him, but I think he ultimately wants to be involved. He wants to be there. He recognised that Shane and David are building something nice here, and he doesn't want to be causing a distraction, because I think he knows that, coming in at the end of August with continued headlines is not going to help him, not going to help the team. And I think everyone's pulling in the right direction. But I do think Saquon's team didn't handle it right. I think he could have got the contract. But unfortunately, if you're advised, you see Christian McCaffrey signing a $60 million contract and you genuinely believe you're better or just as good as him, I can understand the nature of why you've pushed for it. But I think that contract is a little bit distorted, bearing in mind you see what else is happening around the league. And I genuinely think Barkley's team in the end ultimately caves. Is that the right way? Caved. I know it's only for 1 year, but it's not going to go away, because if he has another great season, we're going to be back here in 12 months' time. And, maybe the average cap number might go up for running backs depending on who gets the next contract, but it won't go up by a great number. Certainly don't think he'd be in a position to be demanding 14, 15 million next year, unless we go and win a Super Bowl. And maybe, that's probably a bit extensive to be going down that road. But it'd be interesting to see where we are this time next year, because I think we're going to find ourselves in another position, and they can tag him again next year, which just leads to more disruption from a camp perspective.
Yeah, and then obviously sort of following on from that, I don't know how it impacts Saquon. Obviously seeing the likes of Dexter Lawrence getting a new deal, Andrew Thomas got a new deal as well. I don't think any Giants fan will argue either of the extensions. They were fully deserved from both players. Both players had stellar seasons last year, and really hoping that kind of, do the same again, or even have an even better season, which I think is definitely in the realm of possibility for both of them. But how nice is it to finally see, I should say, players getting a second contract with the Giants after the last however many years, especially more time following the team, obviously sort of 2018 onwards. It was very rare. I've seen a rookie get a second deal. So how nice is it to see these second contracts being signed?
And second contracts from the former GM. I think you run through the players that have been maintained on the back of the previous GM. Let's be fair, Dave, or the Gallman, the amount of stick in which he got when he lost his job and things he done, maybe in free agency that were a bit mystifying. But you touched on there how satisfying to see players being maintained on long-term contracts. It's unusual to see a GM and a head coach come into a new organization, and within the space of 12 to 14 months, they've locked up 3 or 4 players that were from the old regime, like Daniel Jones, Dexter, trying to get Saquon, Andrew Thomas, all former picks. But it is great, and it's only going to continue. The trends there. You're going to have, McKinney next year. He's inevitably another guy that's going to get signed up, and there's other players to come as well. So it's great, and it's great because they recognize. You see, when Sexy Dexy signed the contract, and he was out of the facilities, and he returned, and him and David on the sideline, and once it's very early in the off season. Kind of camaraderie between both of them, and the kind of infectious desire and love for them to be together. It's whets the appetite for all Giants fans, because you just know they all genuinely love and are putting to play for this coaching team, which is fantastic. And I suppose the final point on this I'd say is this inevitably is unfortunately where Saquon is, because running backs now, and we may even see this ourselves, because like we saw in the Super Bowl, Chiefs leaded back as a 7th round pick. But like we've brought in Eric Gray, and what's to say he won't hit the ground running? What's to say like Robinson doesn't make the team? Having been like 12 months ago, he was the lead back for the Jags. He gets traded, he gets moves around. What's to say he won't kind of galvanize himself, make the team, and come in and have a good season? There's so many running backs out there, and unfortunately, that's the situation where the likes of the offensive line is key. We touched on it there in terms of trying to transition to have a strong offensive line. You've got players like Dexter Lawrence. They're not out there. Like running backs are out there, unfortunately for Saquon. But those sort of players are invaluable. We need to keep them, and the fact that they're all staying is great. And it's great for the future. It's not just about this year. It's about 3 or 4 years down the line. You're bringing in more players through free agency, more players through the draft, and to have these players that are going to understand and what's involved in being a giant is huge for the team. So the lack of change within the playing structure is significant.
I mean, you spoke about James Robinson there. We were going to sort of touch on some of the wily veterans that seem to have sort of come in through the Giants door. James Robinson, obviously one of them. There's a few other smaller names, but Cole Beasley as well is another one. I mean, those two, of Beasley and Robinson alone. I mean, I don't think we need any more Robinsons on the team. I think he's the 4th one. But those two alone surely bring so much experience to the team to talk to all those sort of younger players like Gray, like Hodgins, and like Hyatt, really.
I was surprised by the Beasley pickup in the sense of I thought that would have been one that was done last year. Like, bearing in mind where they were last year, and they're coming in, Dable, and they bring Feliciano in, he plays on the offensive line because he'd been with Dable in Buffalo and he understood the nature of what kind of offense he has. I thought that would have made more sense last year, but I know Beasley stepped away from the game for a period of time, and he was in 2 months when he was come back. So to see that one happen a couple of weeks back, I was a little bit taken back. And more so because Crowder has come in, as a free agency pickup, and he's been with the Jets and been with the Bills, and again another player that's played for a brief period with Dable, and he'd understand the nature of what's looking for, and he's a special teams player. So yeah, for me, they're going to battle it out, but I'm not sure whether Beasley will make the battle. If he makes it, I get it, because I understand he'll be a player that Dable will trust and rely on within the slot. But you've got Paris Campbell there, But again, he's looking at this. These are seasoned vets who can come in and players can learn from. Whether they're there in the long term, I'm not sure. I'm excited to see Crowder, and I know it's a bit bizarre bearing in mind the other players, but he seems to have done well no matter where he's gone. So I still think he's a bit left in the tank.
Do you think someone like Beasley is most likely going to make the roster if, say, Shep doesn't recover fully, or if Wandale's still on the pup by the end of training camp and obviously doesn't play in preseason?
Yeah, I don't think long term Beasley is going to be there. I'd be surprised if he makes it. I think that there's talk now of Robinson even coming back before the season, taking him off the pup list. And I think it was Artax Staple new kind of quote. I know you had a great interview with him last week, but he said I'm genuinely surprised to see him come back so soon. But there is talk of him coming back. But again, I suppose it's cautious there. Like, you can't throw him in here coming back off a serious injury. I'd be surprised if Beasley makes it. Genuinely, I think. But again, we've seen so many versions of the NFL over the course of the last 4 or 5 years where players you think are ready to leave the league, find ways to navigate themselves into a team that do well for. And what's to say he can't come in and do well? But I just think there's other players there that can just be just as effective for the team.
Well, let's talk about another weapon on offense. Darren Waller was someone that we spoke about last time, and it obviously wasn't long after the news had broke that he was being traded to us. But we hadn't seen anything of him. Now we have. He looks, I think, unguardable is probably the right word. If he stays injury free, is he now that number one receiver for Jones for the next season?
He's everything you want and more, isn't he? Like, you look at all the coverage in which we've seen in training camp, and you touched on there. He's unmanageable. No one can deal with him. No one could deal with him when he was fully fit playing for the Raiders in an AFC West, which is stacked with really good defense and good teams, but yet they still found ways to get him the ball. He's arguably one of the top 5 tight ends in the league, and on his days, but you could say he's the best. But it's the injury factor, isn't it? Like, that's the biggest concern. Like, I don't know. We could all be sitting here week 3, week 4, and kind of saying if only we had Waller, but if he's fit And judging by the connection, the relationship we're already seeing in training camp, I'd imagine he would have a very big season. I'm really hopeful that he is the number one. Is he the number one player on the? Inevitably, I think he may be, because how do you cover him? Like he can sit on the line. He can go out deep as a wide receiver. He can play in slot. You can put him in any position, and ultimately he's going to do what he can do, because, as you said, he's unmarkable. And then if he's not the one taking the ball, some other players are going to find access on the field and get the exposure which they deserve. But I'm really hopeful that we see the Waller of the last 2 or 3 years. Not even last year, because he had a few injuries, but those 2 other years with Derek Carr and how they played together. I mean, he's the storyline going into this division, because you look at the other teams and they've all got a standout player. I always felt we'd go for another wide receiver, even in free agency. I know Paris Campbell came in the slot, but I thought we still might have went for an aggressive move on a number one somewhere. But obviously bringing him in kind of changes the dynamic of this offense completely. It's something we haven't had an experience for quite some time. We're touching on Hyde as a deep threat, but we haven't had a player down the middle that is a comfort blanket, just even for picking up 10, 15 yards and continuing the drive. Like, that's something. When's the last time we had a player that we could say you could put the ball up to him with 2 or 3 players around him and he'd still probably take the ball in? It's a fantastic player. But again, what we see in training camps is a cautious people. Like, he's got all the tools to be really effective with this team. And he's so exciting. He's so exciting. Like, every fan out there just can't wait. Like, you talk to various different Giants fans, and you ask them, what are you looking forward to most for week 1? And it's Waller. It's just to see how they connect together.
So we've got a couple more for you. So, in your opinion, looking at the roster right now, what are the biggest strengths and the biggest weaknesses of the team?
I'll start with weakness. I think linebacker is still a huge concern. I know Davis, which was a bit of an unusual one that came out. I mean, he signed late in the season last year. He picked up, I believe, from the Lions. He played reasonably well towards the end of the season, and there was talk of him potentially being in the linebacker position for the course of the season. He gets that season-ending injury, and even today, there's speculation that they're bringing in as Anthony Barty, former Vikings player who was supposed to be picked up by the Jets in free agency a couple of years back, and he fell flat on his face, and he went back to the Vikings. There's talk of him coming in, and to me, that's a bit of a signal. I know we brought in a couple of players a couple of weeks ago, but again, these players are kind of, for me, getting opportunities just to see if they really have it, like the likes of Cole Beasley. But to see them still out there actively pursuing linebackers, for me, that's kind of a bit of a concern. And it's been a position of need for quite some time. It hasn't really gone away. That's my concern, because, and then obviously how that affects trying to stop their own defense last year. Got gashed so many times, and was really a great season. That was a problem. I know from doing a Giants podcast. Remember from the New York Post, he said that was Joe Shane's number one kind of focus once the season ended, was to find a linebacker, and Carrick's come in. But I still think we needed someone else there who, at that level, that can support him. Strongest piece of the team, you could argue the defensive up front if they get it right, and you bring in Robinson with the Rams. He's come off the pup this week. I mean, he's won a Super Bowl. He's a really strong player, and obviously sexy Dexy. And it'd be interesting to see how Kayvon gets on. I think we're on a crest of a wave in terms of what we could do defensively. I think up front, there's a lot more to come from this defense. We saw flashes of it last season. I think there's a lot there to see. I think we could find ourselves looking at a team that's going to have a lot more sacks, and I think Kayvon in particular might have a really strong second season. For Kayvon last year, unfortunately, and I think this is going to happen, unfortunately, not necessarily with the Giants. It's the law of averages when you watch any preseason game. Like, he got that injury for his preseason game against the Bengals, and he didn't really play again until week 4 in the season when he made his debut. Like, we don't need that, but if he stays fit, I think he's in for a huge season. I think defensive line and the number of sacks in which we might see this season will increase based on what we had last year.
You mentioned Barr in that. Shane, did you say that you heard something about the Anthony Barr rumours earlier today?
Yeah, I've read, I don't know which beat writer it was, but apparently Joe Shane's come out and said it's not happening. Okay. But I can't remember who it was. I'll see if I can try and find it a little bit.
But I would say at least the fact that it's speculated, to me, kind of sounds like they are on the lookout for linebackers. And I think we saw last year throughout the course of the season, there was various different linebackers. Brian Smith came in, former Cowboy. He's not coming back this year. There was various other different players played. I kind of get the sense that's not really gone away, and we can find ourselves in that kind of similar position again, which is what you need. You need settled linebackers in the team. Like, we've got settled safeties. I know Love has moved on. But I think we're in a good spot there. I think we're gradually in a good spot in the secondary. You got Jackson and obviously Banks coming in, but the linebacker thing just for me is still a bit of it. And it'd be interesting. Like there'd be a lot of expectations on O'Carrick coming in from the Colts to do a lot, but you need two there, and that for me is a bit of a risk and a gamble. I wouldn't be surprised like come 2 or 3 weeks time we're talking about potentially a new linebacker coming in from a different team, because we're going to see gradually over the course of the next 2 weeks, because of the change in rules over the course of the last 3 years, the teams have to release players sooner in camp, where previously you could go to the very end and make marquee change. Now you gradually have to reduce your numbers in camp, so players will get picked up, and I think players might get a shot to play again in free games for the Giants that we're not even talking about at the moment in that particular position.
Did you manage to find it, Shane, at all?
Yeah, it's Daryl Slater from NJ.com put an update out saying Anthony Barr actually won't be visiting the Giants after all. That was the word Wednesday from Giants general manager Joe Shane before the second and final Giants-Lions joint practice in Detroit. But yeah, I agree with what Brian's saying about the linebacker. I mean, I feel like for about the last 3 years, I've been banging the table for us to draft a linebacker in the first round or two, because there's been decent ones there. And obviously, was it last year when Eagles took the Georgia guy whose name escapes me? I think he fell all the way to the 4th or 5th round.
Nakobe Dean, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Nakobe Dean.
Yeah.
Like even him, was like when you keep seeing a player like that drop, and I think I had him as linebacker 2 at the time. I was like, please just take a linebacker, because it just seems like the one position that we kind of don't really seem to draft early on in a draft for some reason. So, but I know they've said they want to take a look at the 2 young guys they've got in Beavers and McFadden. But yeah, you've got to imagine that we'll pick someone up in free agency. And like has been reported last year from these joint practices, we ended up picking up Pinnock and Cager after we'd done Giants practice from the Jets. So, for any Giants fans that are going to be watching the game this week against the Lions, you might not really be paying much attention to the Lions players, but there could be a couple of positions that are worth just watching, because you never know, they might end up on the waiver wire.
Yeah, that's Shane is spot on there. That's kind of to the point I'm making. You're going to see over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks players being released by teams. Even with ourselves, like you'll see players released by the Giants picked up by other teams, given an opportunity. There's probably someone out there that we're going to be talking about come week 2, week 3 in the season. That's probably not even on the roster right now. But it's like a revolving door of linebackers, and we just don't seem to, correct it. And look, they have their strategy. Like we can't fault Joe Shane or what Brian Dable have done so far, but it's just unusual. I thought it was something that they would have looked. But maybe like Beavers, by all accounts, is having a strong camp. Like, and you got to say, the injury last year, we haven't really seen the merits of what he can do for us. Maybe they know and recognize as players, younger players there from that have come in that can really step in this year. That we gradually over the course of their career, we see players make that step up. Maybe there's a linebacker in the offering that we haven't really discussed or focused in on yet. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, before we let you go, I'm going to put a question on to you that we seem to be asking all of our guests at the moment. And I should have given you a heads up on this one because everyone else gets stuck on it. But it's just a bit of fun. So you get your 3.
Should I be nervous? Should I be nervous?
It's not too bad. It's the 3 dream dinner guest question, Brian. So we've asked everyone else in the off season, so it's probably about time we ask you rather than asking you serious questions all the time.
For the Giants, 3 dinner players that have over to my house or go over for a meal. Like some of them might get messy in the house. Eli Manning has to be one. I think that's it. Am I right in saying Eli came out on top of most people's wish list? Is that fair to say?
No, because we've mainly asked this to kind of like, we asked it to Dan Duggan. We asked Art. I'm pretty sure we've asked a couple of other people as well.
Casey. Did we ask Casey?
Yeah, we did ask Casey. Most people tend to go for what we call the trifecta. There's one person from sports, there's one person from music, and one person from like TV and film. Other than Art, who decided to go for Bill Clinton last week.
Oh, this is in general. This isn't just a Giants.
Oh yeah, no. You can go whatever.
Oh God, I was going to give you 3 Giants players.
You could give us both.
Is that made it easier or harder?
More difficult. Eric Cantona, absolutely. King Eric. Eli Manning. I'll keep with Eli Manning, and that's a tough one. God, that really is a difficult one. Carl Banks, because I love listening to his podcast with Bob Papa, and I love listening to him do the in-game day stuff. And he's obviously had the good fortune of interviewing him, and I met him in Arizona at the Super Bowl for a limited period. But his storytelling of the Giants back in the 80s is fantastic, and I think like he's a stellar player. And when you've got Lawrence Taylor, obviously people kind of continuously focus on Lawrence Taylor, but some of the stories which Carl Banks has on the Giants and the Giants' makeup, both on the field and off the field, is really something to be engrossed in. So Eli Manning, Carl Banks, and Eric Cantona.
See, there we go. 3 sports and still got 2 Giants in there.
There we go.
Well, Brian, I mean, it's been short and sweet this time, but we'll make sure that obviously during the season we have you on, because there'll be plenty to talk about, and it'd be good to get your opinions during that. But as always, we appreciate you coming on. And
I enjoy coming on. Obviously, I know we don't do it enough. You know, you just touched on it there, March. Like we're only just on the back of free agency, but certainly looking forward to coming back on during the season and appreciative of the great work you do. Like with the show, I was trying to cover everything across the league, so sometimes you need to take time out and just focus on your own team, and you do a great job of this. So I really appreciate you inviting me on. I look forward to being back on, hopefully in a winning season.
Oh, absolutely. Now, before you go, do you want to just let everyone know where they can find you and all your work?
Yeah, the Irish NFL show on Twitter. We are at IRENFL. I have to remember that. And you get us on our YouTube channel, which is at Irish NFL Show. We have Instagram, TikTok. It's a great interview which we did over the past week with Harrison Smith, the Viking safety. I didn't bring up the playoff loss. I slightly did, but I didn't really say too much about it. And we have a live show in Dublin in 2 weeks, the week of the college game. We have Phoebe Schechter from Sky Sports as our special guest. So we're looking forward to doing that and building up to a new season. Obviously, we're going to be giving our picks away for who we think will be making the playoffs and the Super Bowl. But yeah, we do a lot there. We have podcasts going out daily, and obviously we have during the season with 2 live shows with Colin and our new co-host Connor Brophy. So onwards and upwards for another great season for the show, and obviously for yourselves as well.
Absolutely, we'll make sure we check out a few of those during the season, Brian. Like we appreciate all the support you give us, and obviously we hope that's reciprocated from you guys as well. We really do love what you do. So, and hopefully it won't be too long until we're over in Ireland and we can all get a Guinness over there.
Yes, Kevin keeps talking about a meetup, and I'm still awaiting the confirmation of that meetup. You just need to figure that out. That's definitely should be on your next wish list at your committee meeting, shall we call it?
We'll make sure we do that. We'll speak to Kev.
Yeah,
perfect.
Put Kev as the organizer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
great talking to you guys.
Hopefully, it's not another year before I speak to you or see you again, Brian, as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Shane. Right, guys. Thanks very much, and look forward to being on again. Take care.
See you later. Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Bye-bye.
Right now, so Shane, with Brian gone, it's time for the last ever, for this season, State of Play for cornerbacks. Do you want to kick us off with our first cornerback?
Yeah, so it's mental. We've gone through every position, and it's like a little bit sad that it's going to be coming to an end after this one. I have enjoyed it, talking about it or listening to it on the episodes I haven't been on. But yeah, we're going to be talking cornerbacks, and up first is going to be Adoree Jackson. Best place to start, in my opinion. Last year, he improved his career best reception percentage to 53.7%, allowing 11.7 yards per reception. He did get a knee injury sidelining him for the final 6 weeks of the regular season, which he picked up fielding a punt return. None of us need reminding of that, and hopefully we're not going to be seeing it this coming season as well. He did have a return for the wildcard weekend where we went up against Minnesota Vikings and he faced Justin Jefferson. A few weeks prior, we played the Vikings in the regular season, and Jefferson, in Adoree's absence, went for 133 yards and a touchdown on 12 receptions. However, in the playoff game, it's a completely different story. He went 47 yards and no touchdowns on 7 receptions. 4 of those receptions and 31 yards came on the opening drive. So you can see he didn't do much after that opening drive. And with Adoree lining up opposite Jefferson in that game on 85% of his routes, he only registered 6 catches for 37 yards. So over the course of the season, he had 554 snaps and was targeted 54 times. He led 29 receptions, and as I say, that was 53.7%, which is tied for 15th best in the league among cornerbacks. He had 41 tackles and 7 pass breakups, 0 interceptions, which, in all honesty, I'm not going to hold against him because it seemed like no joint DB could seem to get interceptions at times last year. So this coming season, obviously, he's demonstrated his ability against the top receivers with strong target catch rates. He's in a contract year, as we all know, so he's going to have to stay consistent. And more importantly, which has been an issue for him over the years, in all honesty, avoiding injuries. If he stays healthy and gains a few interceptions, could lead to a Pro Bowl consideration. And, you know, it'd be interesting what happens in 12 months' time in terms of Adoree Jackson and him getting that contract. So, you know, Craig, do you think we see him on the roster in this time next year when we're doing our positional breakdowns again for cornerbacks?
It's almost $1 million question, isn't it? Well, probably several $1 million question when it comes to Adoree. As Brian alluded to earlier, it's, you know, Xavier McKinney's due for some money. We don't know what's going to happen with Saquon as of yet. So there's a high percentage chance that I think it's the perceived 50 million or whatever we're going to have in cap space at the end of next year. And that's not including whatever the cap goes up by and obviously the moves and the shakes at the end of the season. Adoree and Big Cat are going to be the two to look out for. I do think injury history could count against him, especially if two of our rookies that we're going to talk about shortly really show out this year. I think that's going to be the key marker, is how well those rookies do is ultimately going to decide whether Adoree gets another contract or not. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of factors, to be honest. I think, number one, it depends on how he does injury-wise this year. Number two, it depends on, as you say, how the rookies get on. And number three, I think it's also going to depend on what money he's asking for in 12 months' time. So, you know, if you look at it, let's say he's off the roster in 12 months' time, we've all of a sudden got a very, very, very young cornerback group. You know, you've got 2 rookies in it this year. Flott going to be going into his 3rd year. Obviously, we'll have Aaron Robinson going into his 4th, but he's missed quite a lot of time as well. So I think if Jackson's not on the roster in 12 months' time, I'd like to think we'll bring in a veteran cornerback of some sort just to help the room out a little bit. But, you know, I think it's all 3 of those factors are going to be the deciding factor on what happens with Adoree Jackson.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, speaking about one of those rookies now, second cornerback on the list is Deonte Banks, who obviously we drafted in the 1st round this season. Now, last season, you know, Banks was coming back from a shoulder injury that he suffered in 2021 and was the starting corner at Maryland. And it had its best season statistically, 38 total tackles, 8 pass breakups, 1 interception. Allowed a pretty damn impressive 43.3% completion percentage when targeted by opposing defenses. I mean, he had 60 targets and only 26 receptions allowed, 43.3% reception rate, which is, you know, it's pretty impressive. And it earned him an honourable mention in the All Big Ten selection. So, you know, he did ball out for Maryland last year. I mean, if you look at some of his other stats, 679 snaps. He had 8 pass breakups. He had that solo interception. The only problem is like when you talk about the fact that he only had 1 interception on the amount of snaps that he played, it is one thing that obviously, like you said earlier, that we struggled with. So we're going to need players really to hawk in on the ball a bit more. But you know, Banks has been opposite Adoree for most of training camp, so it's going to be a shock if he doesn't start week 1. But we have some pretty damn tough receivers to face this year. If Adoree goes down, even if he doesn't go down, we've got some tandems to face this year. So we're not expecting perfect play from him. There is going to be teething issues. I mean, he's a rookie at the end of the day. But given that he was selected 1st round, is there pressure for him to really hit the ground running straight away?
I think there's I think there's a degree of pressure, and that's just because, like, you know, you always want to see, you know, you've invested a 1st round on this, and I think when you look at it strategically, the hit rate on 1st rounders is quite low. Like, there's a lot of 1st rounders that turn out to be busts, and I think sometimes as fans we we forget that and don't realise, you know, just because you got a first round pick, it's not a guarantee. You know, you could have the number 1 overall pick. Doesn't mean that you're going to get a future Hall of Famer. But I think there's going to be a tiny bit of on banks, and like you say, especially if Jackson goes down. But you know, I think we were all happy with the Banks pick at the time. None of us were unhappy with it. None of us said it was a reach. None of us went, we didn't want him. And I think, you know, he's going to fit the system quite well. Now, earlier on, Brian alluded to he gets a little bit penalties, etc. Just had a quick look, and he had 8 penalties in total last year in 13 games. So, you know, that's a little bit more than you'd like. And I think the one thing that we need to keep patience with Deontay Banks with is something I've always maintained: quarterback, O-line, cornerback. They're the 3 hardest positions, in my opinion, for a rookie to come in. I've said it before, not everybody's going to come in and be a Sauce Gardner and absolutely light it up. So, and I think that could be a bit of a hindrance that some people are going to hope, oh, have we got the next Sauce Gardner? And we shouldn't be comparing to that. We should be comparing to other cornerbacks that have entered the league and have had their own struggles. I mean, you look a few years ago, Jeff Okudah got took 4th overall by Detroit Lions, and, you know, he doesn't look like he's going to be getting a second contract. So, yeah, I think we do need to temper our expectations a little bit with him. There's going to be teething problems. He's going to give penalties up. He's going to give some coverage up. And like you say, he's going to be up probably, in my opinion, maybe like the best receivers in the NFL. I mean, look, you know, you've got CD Lamb, you've got Scary Terry McLaurin, you've got AJ Brown, you've got Devontae Smith. He's going to get tested, and he's going to get tested, you know, start of the season, week 1 against Dallas. But yeah, I think, you know, as long as we temper our expectations, and the key thing is he seems like a player who's going to learn. He's willing to learn, and that's important. You know, let's face facts. As long as he doesn't turn into DeAndre Baker 2.0, we're probably going to be pretty happy with him this season.
I mean, you could even say as long as he doesn't turn into Eli Apple, we'd be pretty happy with him this season. So, you know, there we go. But do you want to carry on with the next one?
Yeah, so up next is a guy who I wasn't happy with the pick last year. I referred to as Cordell Flop. I didn't want him in the 3rd round, and I happily hold my hands up to it. But you know, when he played at times last year, he did show promise. He had a bit of a learning curve in his rookie season. He conceded his first touchdown against the Cowboys and enjoyed a calf injury in week 3. He did struggle in weeks 12 to 14. However, he did show promise and potential at times. Season finale, he showed promise in the season finale, by limiting receptions to 42.9% and demonstrating his growth potential for a successful 2023 in a position where he should have rightfully been drafted for, and that's the slot cornerback going up against a player who we'll be talking about in a little while, I'm sure. And most importantly for me, let's not forget, Cordell Flott had a great play against the Vikings in was it in the playoff game? I think it was when he broke up.
It was the second to last play of the game, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, on 3rd down, I think, if I remember right, and you know, he got his hand in there. And I want to say, I don't think he played a single snap in that game until then, and I think that shows great. If I'm right in saying that, I think that shows great maturity and professionalism from a player. You know, you sat there, you're not being used, and all of a sudden, bam, you called upon in a key play. You know, this is a play that, you know, if they get first down, they're going to keep the ball moving. Look, you know, settling the score up a little bit. But instead, he made the play, and it was a great play. Last year, he had 335 snaps, 24 targets, allowed 16 receptions, 66.7% reception rate. He had 17 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and again, another player that had no interceptions, which is a common theme with the cornerbacks. And though he may not be an every game starter, Flott will likely get a heavy workload as part of the slot corner rotation in sub packages. He has shown up to training camp with some more heft, which is one of the things that both me, Kev, and most draft analysts said, that, you know, he was a little bit undersized and he needed to add a bit of weight. And he's made some impressive plays in training camp. So Sports Illustrated, they've marked Flott as one of the most underrated players on the team. Do you agree with that assessment? Like one of the most underrated?
I don't think he is one of the most underrated players on the team. I think he might be one of the most underrated players on defense for the Giants. But I think if you look at the team, I think, you know, we had some proper diamonds last year. like Isaiah Hodgins, really, who I think again is still underrated as a pass catcher, considering how well he did. Now, if you look on the defense, I think Flott has done really well in training camp, and there is a sizable difference in him. You can see that. I mean, unfortunately, last year it looked like a strong wind might take him away at times. So it's nice to see that he's kind of bulked out a little bit. But I think a lot of the stuff that he's done has unfortunately been overshadowed by Pinnock and his highlight reel one-handed catch in the end zone, which kind of overshadowed some of the plays that Flott had made on the day, which is unfortunate. But I don't think he's one of the most underrated players on the team, because I think a lot of the time you've really got to be on the pitch and show it consistently, and then still not get the accolades that you should get. I think maybe at the end of the season we could say he's underrated, but it's difficult to say that right now. Don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he's one of the most underrated. I think he could be a player who could have a good season this year. I mean, I've just had a quick look. So, like, we drafted Cordell Flott last year, third round, pick 81. Now, when he was drafted, a lot of people said he's drafted as a slot corner. Absolutely fine, no issues with that. Now, he played 335 snaps on defense last year. He played just 15 in the slot. He had 269 as an outside cornerback. Now, and that was because of the injuries we had. Obviously, we lost Aaron Robinson. Adoree went down as well. But, it just sort of shows that, last year, he is a slot cornerback in this league, 100%. That was what I think he was drafted for. I don't know the Giants' exact thinking, but in my opinion, he was drafted as a slot cornerback. That's his best position. And he only had a mere 15 snaps out of 335 at the slot position. So I think this year, the slot position's there. It's up for grabs. He's got to take it with both hands. And the corner, we've got to see it from there. I mean, I wouldn't say he's underrated. Do I still think it was a great pick at the time? Not particularly. I think the Giants maybe kind of took that pick and gambled on a little bit of upside, and hopefully we can kind of see some progression for this coming season if he does win that slot battle. But yeah, I agree with what you said. I just don't think he's one of the most underrated players. Even on defense, I could probably, I'd have someone like, in all honesty, I'd have someone like Azeez Ojulari above him as an underrated player, because he doesn't get much talk, but his production, he's great when he's on the field. So I wouldn't have him as one of the most underrated, no.
So moving on to another rookie, and a rookie really who's blown all expectations out of the water. Now, Trey Hawkins last year started 12 games as a cornerback. Now, I say as a cornerback because college teams, as you well know, Shane, they could throw you wherever they bloody want to throw you. But he tallied 57 tackles, 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups. He also stood out with some impactful plays, including fumble recoveries and a block kick, earning himself recognition as the Sun Belt Conference Defensive Player of the Week. Didn't receive an invite to the Combine, only really having the chance to put on a performance at his pro day. Now, he played 840 snaps, 57 targets, 33 receptions allowed, 61.1%. Those 53 tackles were tied 7th most in college football last year amongst cornerbacks. Now, to put that into perspective, that's out of 520 players. So there's a lot of players in college football. So to be sort of anywhere near top 10 is pretty damn impressive. Yeah, the 3 pass breakups and the 2 interceptions, like I said. Now, Hawkins could well be that thing that we've been asking for forever, probably for as long as you've been a fan, and that's a late round draft gem. Like, we just do not hit on those later round third day picks. Now, he is a raw player, we know that, but he's got such prototypical size and speed for the position and has quickly risen through the ranks. He could be this year's Tariq Woolen, who was picked 153 in round 5 last year. But alongside Banks and Flott, if Hawkins does really start to shine as much as he has actually in games, this really is going to make the roster have a kind of core that's exciting for the next few years, if not longer.
Sorry, I thought I was on mute then. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to kind of have him pan out. I mean, like, I know he's been doing great in training camp. I've kind of tempered my expectations of him a little bit because I'm mindful it's training camp, and I'm really keen to see how he does do in pre-season, to see whether he can convert what he's doing in training onto the field. But one of my favourite things about Trey Hawkins is his tackling. He had a 73.8 grade last year for his tackling, which might not sound that impressive, but over the last 5 games, the lowest he had was a 77.4, and he didn't miss a single tackle in either of those last 5 games either. Like we've alluded to with Adore, if these rookies can pan out, you've got to question if Adore's going to be back and if it would be more suitable to get a cheaper vet come into the team. Like, not using this player as an example, but let's say you can get Patrick Peterson on a 1-year vet minimum, that kind of player, someone who's been there and done it all. You'd rather bring him in just to kind of tutor the rookies a little bit more. They don't know everything just after one rookie season, but it would be absolutely great for him to be that, diamond in the rough. I'd love him to be this year's Tariq Woolen. Tariq Woolen last year, I think he was up there for defensive rookie of the year. I think obviously he lost out to Aidan Hutchinson, but he was definitely up there, and he had a great rookie season. And he also come out of a smaller school, not like a big time school. But if you've got, how old's Deontay Banks? Are you 23, 24?
I think if you bring the graphic up that we've been using, it's got their ages on the end of it. Oh, yeah. So
I forgot about that. The joys of producing as well as trying to keep up with everything you do at times. If you look at that, you got Trey Hawkins 23, you got Deontay Banks who's 22, and then like another player we've already talked about called Alflot's 22 as well. So it'd be great, especially because like the cornerback position for the Giants has kind of felt like you're just picking a number out of an hat as to who's going to play at the position. We've not had any real great success at the cornerback. Obviously, we had James Bradbury, but we've not had any depth really behind these players. So, I'd love it. And who knows, maybe one of us might end up with a Hawkins jersey in 12 months' time.
Looking at that stat, at that graphic there, though, Adore Jackson's only 27, so it's not like we have a real. I can't say we don't have a veteran because Adore obviously is. He's on his second contract, but we don't have like one of those old veterans who seen it all in their sort of mid to late 30s when the cornerbacks are kind of starting to slow down physically, but mentally they have the sort of lay of the land. With him being the oldest, along with the next player, which you're gonna touch on in a sec. It is a young core of a team, really.
Yeah, obviously I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll be interested to see how many other teams in the league their oldest cornerback is 27. Because I imagine most teams have got someone who's in that kind of 29, 30, 31 kind of bracket, kind of not considered a veteran, but not considered a veteran in terms of age, but he's considered a veteran in terms of experience. And I won't be surprised if Adore is probably let me say this right, the oldest, youngest player in the league. But yeah, as you say, we're going to touch on the next player now, and that's one of my guys out of Penn State a few years ago, picked up out of free agency this year. And just to it's something that's just thought. He played for Detroit last year, and I just wonder kind of how much the Giants have been sort of playing in this season and this training camp they've had with the Lions, and kind of if he's had something to prove. But that's Amani Oruwariye. He had a career best season in 2021, but 2022 was the complete opposite. 2021 was like probably an 8 out of 10. 2022, in all honesty, was like a 2 out of 10. It was dreadful. But he did have quite a few injuries. But the problem is that when he was fit, he was just inconsistent in coverage and would give away needless penalties, which ultimately led to his benching after a game against the Patriots. So his snaps for last year, he had 474 snaps with 52 targets. He allowed 39 receptions, which equated to a 75% reception. 37 tackles, 3 pass breakups, and for anyone who might be playing a game along at home, interceptions was also nil. Obviously, the Giants are going to be hoping that Amani plays somewhere closer to his 2021 season than his 2022 season. But at times, it's probably a safer bet to prepare for the worst, especially when someone gets picked up in free agency, unless it's a a top player who's got top money, which Amani hasn't, there's a reason why they're big free agency.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we're going to fire through the rest of these because a lot of these now are kind of either on the cusp or, could potentially be cut. So next up is Aaron Robinson. Robinson played in the opener against the Titans before missing the next 2 games due to an appendix procedure. He then returned against Chicago week 1, but was later placed on injured reserve list in October due to a knee injury. Now, Robinson is only 3 years into his rookie deal, but he's missed a hell of a lot of time through injury. The potential was there when he was picked up, and because he's on a rookie deal, it's obviously low cost for the Giants. Don't have to really worry too much about the cap numbers. And I think that probably saves him this upcoming season from getting cut just because of the fact that it's low money, high potential, and he is still on the PUP list, but once he gets activated, I think that's really we're gonna see which way they're going to steer with him.
Yeah, I think Aaron Robinson's this is a big season for Aaron Robinson. As you say, he's going into his 3rd year, and he's had his injuries. And when you look, the fact that obviously you got Adoree going into a contract year, so he's going to be you'd imagine he's going to be playing for a new deal, effectively, whether it's with the Giants or somebody else. So he's going to be looking to ball out. You got 2 rookies who've got something to prove. Obviously, Aaron Robinson kind of falls into that area of Cordell Flott where he was drafted as a slot corner. His best position is slot. He's not an outside cornerback, but due to injuries again, he's also been asked to play a lot of outside coverage, and I just don't think that's his best position. And I think it's a little bit of a shame. And I think, in all honesty, if he doesn't get a second deal with the Giants, it'll always be a case of what could have been because he was never given the opportunity to play where he was drafted. So up next is Rodarius Williams, who's old. I'll just put the graphic up just to show, obviously, bearing in mind how long he's been in the league, and he's 26, and I think he's going into his 3rd season. Was it his second? No, it's his 3rd season, and he's going into. So I think he's going to be turning 27 some point during the season. But he returned from injury last year, and he showed a bit of promise in his rookie year. I think he had a great pre-season in his rookie year, and then he done his ACL, I think it was, I want to say. But he reappeared in week 11, contributing 4 solo tackles in a loss to the Lions. He got his first career interception. Yeah, that's correct. A Giants player, cornerback, got an interception last year in the subsequent game against Dallas, but then spent time inactive until his first start in week 18, where he notched 10 solo tackles against Philadelphia. So even with the Giants' frequent injury concerns, securing a spot on the final roster is going to be no easy task for Rodarius Williams. He did the one thing you probably don't want to do, and that was kind of piss the regime off last year when he kind of expressed his frustrations over Twitter, I believe it was, through lack of game time, and he then ended up getting benched or what's the terminology they use? Is a clean scratch?
Scratch, yeah.
Scratch.
Scratch.
He was a healthy scratch for a couple of games due to these frustrations he'd expressed via Twitter. And he's going to need to outperform all the cornerbacks that we've mentioned already, and probably some of the ones that we've mentioned, we're going to be mentioning soon, to even get a look in on the field.
Do you know what really upsets me is when you turn around and say that he's old in his 3rd year, when quite clearly he's 9 years younger than I am. And you're what, 30? 33. Can we just stop calling these players old? It's really upsetting. I feel sorry for any of our listeners who are older than we are, who must really hate us right now. Moving on to Zion Gilbert. Now, in the latter part of the season, Gilbert was given an unlikely pathway to contribute due to the slew of injuries that we've touched on. Week 13 against Washington, he notched 7 tackles in 56 snaps. He then secured his first sack in week 14 and concluded his season with an appearance against the Colts in week 17, I believe it was. The Giants' off-season moves have probably hampered his chances of being able to really do anything meaningful for this team. They prioritise bolstering the defensive back position with 2 free agent acquisitions and 3 2023 draft picks. And it could mean that Gilbert's really on the outside looking in now.
Yeah, he's got an uphill battle, but I think, like we've mentioned, injuries tend to be a problem. So, if he doesn't get a spot on the 53, you hope that he gets a practice squad. But we'll have to kind of see how that pans out. But, coming around to the next player, some call him big play Darnay, some call him no play Darnay, but it's Darnay Holmes. 2022 was just full of inconsistency for him. He did register a career best 69.7 completion rate on 76 targets, but he did also surrender career high of 487 yards, his first touchdown, and failed to secure an interception. He also led the Giants in penalties, occurring 9, 7 of which granted the opponent's first down. And that's kind of, the one thing you want to see your cornerbacks do is play mistake-free football. And, that you can't be doing that, giving away that many penalties, especially when it's first downs. So his stats for 2022, he had 472 snaps, 66 targets with 43 receptions allowed, 65.2% reception rate. He had 35 tackles, 6 breakups, and again, no interceptions. So you consider the wide variety of options we've got at the slot cornerback. If Holmes persists in occurring penalties, struggling with one-on-one coverage and being bested off the line, the Giants may decide to part ways with him, especially given his current cap figure, which I believe is in and around the 2 million and above range. Now, I will say I'll give these guys a quick shout and a quick credit for them. But talking Giants, one about Darnay Holmes quite recently, and they said, he doesn't really fit the Wink Martindale system. He was more suited to Patrick Graham's defense, and that kind of marries up when you look at it. Because when he was first drafted, he was probably the best draft pick of that year. I can't remember what year it was, but Darnay Holmes, his first year or two, he was like pretty good. I like Darnay Holmes. And then kind of since the change and since Wink's come in, he's just not performed to that level that he was. I'm not saying he was at a great level anyway, but, he was probably the pick of the rookies in his first year or two. I just don't think he's suited to it. And I think it's either going to be cut or trade, or maybe if they really want him, they'll turn around and see if they can do a Darius Slayton type of deal, where last year Slayton was in a similar position and he had to take a pay cut to stay on the team.
Yeah, I think that was exactly what I was going to say, is that the only way you can really see him sticking is that Darius Slayton way. I think if he ends up behind Banks, Jackson, Hawkins, Flott, when you're fifth down, you're probably looking at the backup slot corner there. Now, admittedly, he has been getting the lion's share of the ones at slot corner when Jackson hasn't been kind of being moved around for the weird and wonderful shows that Wink's been kind of putting out on the field during training camp. But I think with the cap number that he has got, what we could save there, especially seeing as you're going to need cap space in the season to sign people, God forbid, or call people up from the practice squad, you have no idea what's going to happen. I do think it's unlikely. I'd put my neck out on the line here and say we won't see Darnay play for the Giants this season.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. As I say, he's got an uphill battle, and in all honesty, I'm hoping worst case we can at least try and get a 6th round pick for him or something. That 6th round pick maybe turns into another Trey Hawkins in 12 months' time. That it's kind of worth it, but just that, trying to get something for him. But I think the problem might be that teams will know full well they're going to have to cut him, so we'll just get him in on the waiver wire.
Yeah, right. Let's round this off with I guess we could call him Mr. Irrelevant in the State of Play rankings here. But Gemon Green, 2022 season, Green appeared in 13 games with 10 starts, contributing 24 tackles, 3 pass breakups. His performances, coupled with his consistency across the season, earned him an All Big Ten honourable mention selection. He played 263 snaps last year, was targeted 45 times, allowed 24 receptions for 53.3% reception rate. 24 tackles, 3 pass breakups, that lovely big fat donut in the interception ranking, which just seems to be a thing that the Giants look for, evidently. Now, Green is a strange one because obviously undrafted rookie free agent, fits the mold physically. I know there's been a lot of talk about him being quite entertaining today in the third team reps that he had against the Lions in our joint practice, but his lack of productivity in college likely is going to count against him unless he flashes something for the remainder of preseason. One day isn't going to change his fortunes. Interestingly enough, he actually played with opposite his brother in college and left his brother behind. His brother decided to stay on for another year, whereas Gemon decided to declare. So I think it's probably going to be practice squad, if anything, for him. Don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's not probably going to get much of a look in all honesty, in this pre-season. I think he'll get like obviously time with the thirds and that, but I think there's too much talent kind of in front of him for him to be able to make a meaningful impact. I think his best hope is land on the practice squad. Don't mean this in a nasty way, but hope somebody gets injured and then maybe he can get in there a little bit like Pinnock did kind of last year at times.
Yeah, I've just been looking at the comments, and Kev is obviously watching along, but very tempting to cut him. I think we're talking about Darnay here, and use that money for a linebacker or edge. Eagles signed Jack and Cunningham, both 1 year, 2.5 million each. So Darnell's money can get a serviceable player, and I think that's exactly what we've kind of alluded to there, is that we're going to need money at some point, and cut. I tell you what, cut day could be quite interesting, I guess, the final cut day. If we hear rumours or murmurs that a very good linebacker is surprisingly cut, I mean, that really could seal Darnay's fate, really.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting what happens on cut day, because obviously they have to make all the cuts at once now. There's no cutting down from 90 to 75 to whatever it is, and that it's all got to be done at once. So it would just be interesting. Maybe some teams, we're going to be looking at cutting this player. We can see you need a linebacker. Do you want to do a trade? And maybe it could work both ways with the Giants. If a team needs a cornerback,
Yeah.
So hopefully we can try and. I'd like to try and trade him if we can, if that's, and we can sort the money out that way. But it'd be a big ask, I think.
So obviously, finally, when we did our 100th episode, we had a question in from John Schmeelk from the Giants, and we decided to kind of keep it back purely for this because we hadn't done the State of Play cornerbacks and it fits so well. So let's play that video and then let's answer the question.
Hey guys, John Schmeelk here from the Giants. Greetings from across the Atlantic. In the States, congratulations on your 100th episode and holding it down for Big Blue fans in the UK. Great accomplishment. Congratulations. Happy to be part of the show. Here's my question. Who will be the final set of defensive backs, corners, and safeties on the 53-man roster after cut day? How many of them are there going to be, and who's going to be left off? This is something we've been talking about and debating here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. I think it's probably even tougher than receiver, and this should probably take up at least 20 minutes of your show. Good luck.
So probably would have taken up 20 minutes of the show if there was 4 of us, but there's only 2 of us, so we'll go through. So safeties and cornerbacks. I think there was 4 safeties on the team last year. Cornerbacks, I'm assuming there would be 5, maybe 6.
Yeah, well, what I'll do, I'm just for anyone who's watching along, I'm just going to put the cornerbacks up here just so you got a reminder. So I think you got to go for those 3 who we've got pictures of: Adoree, Deontay Banks, and Cadell Flott. That's going to be 3. Trey Hawkins is obviously going to be 4. Aaron Robinson will be 5. And then I think it's kind of going to be a battle out of like Amani, Rodarius, and Zion Gilbert. I'm going to go for Zion Gilbert. So that'll be mine. Adoree, Deontay, Cordale, Trey, Aaron Robinson, and Zion Gilbert. And then I think, in fact, no, I'm going to remove Zion Gilbert, and I'll tell you why in a second. So safety, I'm going to go Xavier McKinney, Dane Belton, Pinnock, and then McCain, because McCain brings versatility in playing cornerback and safety. So that's what I'm going to have with McCain. So it'll be Adore, Deontay, Cordale, Aaron, Trey as corners, and then the 4 that I've mentioned.
So interestingly, you've kind of gone down a very same or a similar route to me, and I don't know if you might change this afterwards, but Adore, Deontay, Cordale, Trey Hawkins, Aaron Robinson are the ones for me in the cornerback room. Safety, X is a lock. Belton was amazing last season, and I can't wait to see him again this year. Pinnock again came in and performed very well, and as Art said last week on our interview with him, the Giants are very high on Pinnock. Weirdly, I think we're actually going to carry 2 more safeties. I think we're going to carry McCain, but I also think we're going to carry McLeod. I think McLeod will be in that safety room and will have that kind of versatility to cover off cornerback as well, because he did it last year for us so well. Now, obviously, the Giants are trying to move him more towards a safety spot because of how good he is at tackling. But I would be very, very shocked if McLeod is not on the 53.
Sorry, I thought I was on mute. I was looking for my mace, thinking, where's my mace? To unmute myself. I'm just having a quick look. I forgot about McLeod, to be honest with you. I just want to have a quick look at who he... This is live stats here. That's all I'm looking at.
Is that looking at McLeod's stats for last year, or is that looking...
both, to be honest.
Yeah. So just as Shane goes through that, Nick McLeod obviously played quite a few snaps last year, but played them at the cornerback position after I think Adore went down and kind of stepped in, because I think Fabian Moreau was our main number 2 last year, who's obviously no longer with the team. So,
yeah, I mean, to be fair, McCain's stats, he played 353 at safety and then 404 at slot. So he's kind of an even split of stats for Bobby McCain at cornerback and at safety.
I suppose that's the difference, isn't it? McCain's got the versatility of safety and slot, whereas McLeod's got the versatility. I don't know what his numbers are, and I haven't looked these up, but he can play safety, but I'm assuming he played predominantly on the outside last year.
I'm just going to have a quick look.
The PFF machine.
Yeah, so 2022, Nick McLeod last year, he mainly played corner.
Outside.
Yeah, 257 snaps at wide, 132 at slot.
So mixed. Maybe if it is a straight shootout between McLeod and McCain, maybe McLeod gets the nod because of the fact that he can play the outside as well as the slot. Then,
yeah, but that's going to be one. It could be an interesting one to kind of watch in the preseason games and sort of see where they're lining up, if they're lining up at safety position or at the corner positions, and it could be an interesting camp battle that's not been mentioned about much in that sort of battle for the last safety/cornerback spot.
Yeah, I know we were talking the other day, I think it was yesterday, when the unofficial sort of depth charts first came out for the Giants, and you can never read into these anyway, because, I mean, the Bucks have Trask and Baker Mayfield listed as an or on the starter. So I don't think I've ever seen that on a depth chart before. But yeah, if you look at the unofficial depth chart, you've got in the safety... and the strong safety, Pinnock, Belton, McCain. At free safety, McKinney, McLeod, and Javarius Owens. So McLeod is being listed as the backup free safety on there, whereas McCain is the 3rd string strong safety behind Belton. So
yeah,
I think that's the battle that's going to decide a lot of whether this is right or not.
Yeah, and I think one of McCain or McLeod will make the roster again, purely just because of that, like I say, that versatility. You're not just saying, oh yeah, like say McKinney or Belton, they're making the roster to play safety and only safety. Yeah, they'll go up into the box occasionally, but they're not going to be covering the slot or the wide positions. Whereas you've got that option with both McLeod and McCain, that one of them can play the slot, one of them can play outside, and I suppose it depends on what your situation is with the other cornerbacks. I mean, if you turn around and say, you know what, we will keep Corday or Aaron Robinson, and you know what, we're happy to keep Darnay as well, or maybe Darnay takes a pay cut. That's 3 players for the slot that you've got there. So then you're going to be okay. Well, the safety that can play the slot, they're going to miss out because the safety that can play wide is going to be more useful to us.
Yeah, totally agree. So now, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. However, we will be back on Saturday for a bonus pod. Shane, do you want to go through that one? I'm not on that one, so I'll let you do the honours.
Yeah, so we're going to be having one of the guys from the Giant Insider podcast. If you've not given them a listen, I highly recommend it. Jerry's the host, and you've got Chris, who is a bit of a beat writer who gets into the locker room. And, you know, you very often hear Chris asking questions during the Giants press conferences, whether it's in the locker room or whether it's during training camp. So, yeah, this weekend we're going to be joined by the Giant Insider podcast. It's a podcast that I listen to religiously, and the guys I've wanted to get on this podcast for a long time. So really looking forward to getting them on, and, you know, kind of following a similar routine as to what we've done with our other guests, where we'll be asking them questions. Then we'll do a quick fire question with them at the end as well.
Yep. And then obviously next week we'll be back at the usual time for Giants football, Shane. Pre-season. Don't get me wrong, pre-season, but we'll have some stuff to talk about. We'll go through the game. We'll talk about the good things. We'll talk about the bad things. There's evidently going to be some ugly things because it's pre-season, so we'll go through those as well. Anything to add before we disappear?
I will be having a vet day next Wednesday. The listeners had a week off from me last week. They got another week off from me next week, luckily for them. But no, it's just been great chatting. It was really, really good to have Brian on. Like I say, me and him always seem to miss each other on these podcasts and that. So it's great to kind of, you know, sit down and have a chat with him, asking some questions. Love the work that the Irish NFL guys do. And yeah, you know, kind of this is the last official podcast of the Big Blue UK and Ireland without Giants football. From here on out until the bye week, at least, we've got Giants football every week. So, you know, it's really going to be kicking up now. And just a reminder as well, week 1, Dallas Cowboys, there's a meet-up in Birmingham. If you've not got your tickets, do get them. If you're a bit unsure about anything, just slide into our DMs, and Craig will be able to give you the full details, as it's something that's in association with the full 10 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like we said, you can go on to full10yards.co.uk, go to their guide page. You can buy the guide, which we've contributed to yet again. On there are also bundle tickets for the meetup, where you can buy the guide and the meetup ticket, and you get it for a lot of discount versus what it was last year, and you get 2 free drinks at the meetup, which is always, you know, can't go wrong with 2 free drinks. Don't forget as well, we have a meetup in London in October for the Commanders game. That one is going to be at Sports Bar and Grill at Marylebone Station. There is a travel lodge opposite it that I think the majority of us are going to be going to, because we are not going home after that. I can't imagine it's going to be a dry one. Drink wise, remember, Kev is going to buy everyone who turns up in a legacy jersey a drink as well, so make sure you get those. I will dig out my Big Cat one, wherever the hell that is right now. And yeah, as always, remember to like this video, subscribe if you haven't, hit the bell icon to be notified when we go live or when we upload videos, because as we are doing this weekend, there will be a bonus. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search for Big Blue UK and Ireland. And obviously, we're all part of the New York Giants Fans UK Facebook group. You can find us on there. You can talk to us about anything, any of the meetups, any podcast ideas, anything, any feedback you've got, or just ask us any general questions, and we're quite happy to answer those. We're all members of that, all 4 of us. My thanks, as always, go to Brian and to Shane for joining me. To you, the listeners, or the viewers on YouTube, we are signing off until next time.